Hello. So I wanted to try to pass some information to you. This is about your reserve space, and I'm going to try to give you some tips on handling that space a little better. This is not going to be, there's no 100% guarantee because they never wrote this software to help us manage our space very well. Okay, and it's just a fact. I'm not really complaining or dissing on them. It's just the way it is. The reason they didn't do that was probably because they didn't expect this game to be played that long, and they probably didn't expect us to be such a what would you call us, stout followers, that we're just playing and enjoying, and really people are still making mods for it. So anyway, so we want to go, you click on your Skyrim icon here with your start button and go down to manage game and add-ons and come down here to save data, and this shows you where your game saves are. Never delete that unless you're serious. Just don't do it. Reserve space. Your reserve space, this is where your mods are. If your mod storage gets really bad, your only real option is to come here and clear this space. Now, I'm not going to do that, but you know how to do it. You just hit your A, and then I think it gives you the choice. I'm not even going to do that because I could mess up and accidentally delete it. So we're not going to do that, but I'm just going to tell you that that's what you would do. Now, I do that occasionally when I'm ready to do it, which is probably, once every other month I do that, or once every month almost. I don't know. It's every 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. I do it quite often because I'm always doing a lot of things. So I'm going to try to give you the best way to think of your space. That space, that reserved space, which is where all your mods are that you have downloaded. Whether they're enabled or disabled, doesn't matter. If they show up on this list, they're taking up space in that reserve space. Now think of that reserve space as a Tetris container. Okay, remember Tetris? Remember how the pieces come down? Now, but none of it ever drops through the bottom, okay? You don't get the choice of dropping stuff through the bottom. Once it fills up, it's full, okay? But it's like that Tetris container, okay? Now, when we first download our mods, all those mods come down to the bottom of that container, and they just fill it up all nice and neat. They take up every little bit of space. They do a wonderful job. The problem is, once we start, I know because I do this all the time, and honestly, I've been a programmer since the 80s, and I've dealt with, drive fragmentation and different things like this before. So I know how this is working, even though I don't know why exactly they left it exactly this way, but it doesn't matter. That's just the way it is. So what they do, what these mods do when we download them, is they go into that storage and they find a piece of contiguous space. Now, contiguous meaning it's all one big piece of space that mod can fit into. So it's kind of like a puzzle piece. It finds something that's big enough to hold it, and it pops itself in there. Or a Tetris piece. It looks for a place that it'll fit, and it fits itself in. Now, sometimes, after you've done that initial download and you've got all your mods downloaded, and then you go back and you say, well, you know what, I want to get rid of my grass mod. Now, I downloaded it third. So it's like way down at the bottom of that container, and when I delete that 50 some megabytes out, it's going to leave a little gap down in the bottom of that container. Now, a smaller mod, maybe after that I download a smaller grass mod that's maybe 9 megabytes. Well, it'll try to go in if that space was totally unallocated, which it should be, but I think sometimes this system glitches and doesn't totally do that. But if that space is free, that little 9 megabytes will come down there and plop itself in. And now you still got a little hole. The hole's not quite as big, but you still have a little hole down there. Now that hole's about 46 megabytes. So that hole can only fit something that's 46 megabytes and smaller. Now, like I said, I don't think that this system is perfect. I think when we remove mods, for one, I don't think it totally unallocates all the space sometimes, and there's a number of reasons it might do that. One time I messed it up myself, so I can't really say anything. I just happened to exit out at a bad time. That was my own fault. But there could be a number of things that interrupt the process, and it doesn't unallocate all the space, or it creates what you call that ghost space. I think of it as as a fragmentation, but it doesn't matter what you call it. That's fine. You can call it ghost space. It's empty space that you can't use, so that's fine. So that does get created sometimes, and it's created in a couple of different ways. Like I said, kind of in a glitch, where I'm going to call it a glitch. There's probably a better way to term that, but if the space isn't totally unallocated for some reason, or when you create a hole and then other little mods try to come in and fill that hole, but they'll probably never fill it exactly. They'll probably fill it halfway, or maybe 2/3 of the way, but maybe never exactly fill that hole up again, so that you're leaving every time you're moving, you're deleting a mod and then downloading a new mod. Every time you're creating little gaps, and they're just little gaps at first, and you may not even notice much difference at first, but over the course of a few weeks or a month, like me, you start noticing a bigger difference. Now, I try to manage mine to minimize that. Now, it still does happen, okay, but I do try to manage my space to minimize that. But that is the problem, okay? Now, I want to explain to you that this here, what you're looking at here, this is a list. This is just a list of your mods in the order that you have them in, kind of like a table of contents or an index. Your mods are never physically in this order. They're in the order you downloaded them, until you start creating those gaps, and then they try to fill in those gaps when they can. A lot of times they can't. And so once you do that initial download, like I have 30 or 40 core mods, maybe more, but let's just say 40. And you should identify, what are your core mods? What are you always going to use and have? Unless somebody takes them down, which you can't help that. But nonetheless, so that you can always download them first, and you can be sure that that bottom of your tank, that bottom of the Tetris area, is nice and compact and full without any gaps. Then download mods that you're reasonably sure you're going to keep and use for your playthrough, and you like. And then at the very last, download anything that you just want to try or test or maybe check it out, and I don't know if I want to keep it. That way, if you create gaps at the top, it's less of a problem. It can still be a problem, but it's probably going to be less of a problem, and it won't be as big of an issue. Still, creating those gaps can be a problem, but I'm just trying to help you think of a way to minimize it. So try to get the most important stuff downloaded first. Then you come in here and you can rearrange the order. This is only, like I said, an index or a table of contents. When I take and move, let's say I take trees. Well, actually, this is not a good example. It's not a big enough file. Hold on. Let's say, let me go down. I'm going to get a big mod because that's what we need for my example. Yeah, here we go. Let's say Botox. Let's say I want to put it at the bottom of my load order. Okay, so I'm going to put it down at the bottom of my load order. Now, all I did was change the table of contents or the index. The data, the actual data, the block of data that is that mod, never moved in that Tetris well. It's still in the same place. This is just a pointer that the computer, the software, is using to know what order you want to read these mods in. So when we move these mods around, we say we're moving them around. We're really just changing, that's why they call it a load order. We're really just changing the load order. We're telling the software what order to load these mods in. We're not really moving these mods. We're not truly affecting the data. The data is never moved when we do this. So I say that because some people will come out and say, well, before you remove a mod, you need to move it all the way to the bottom. You need to disable it. You need to reset your Xbox. No, you don't. It's not going to make a bit of difference. That's not going to matter. Now, I'm just telling you, nothing you do, once you download that mod, nothing you do moves that mod until you delete it. All this is a pointer. It's just a pointer that tells the software where the mod sits and what order to load it in. That's all it is. That's all you're changing. So I'm just telling you this so you'll understand. People spread this disinformation and they make people crazy, and it's just not correct. It doesn't work that way. That's not the way storage and computers work. Really, if they had done a little better job with the reserve storage, if they had just put in a little piece to manage it and keep us from creating those gaps, yeah, it would mean when you downloaded a mod, it would take a little longer. But in the long run, it would be better for us, because even though we would be a little inconvenienced up front, we would be able to keep our mods longer and not do like I do, where you have to go blow away your reserve space and start all over. So anyway, this is all just information to try to help you out. Remember that this storage space, this reserve space, is kind of like that Tetris bucket. And whatever you download first, it all comes down to the bottom and it lines up real nice and packs itself in really cool and really neat. And it does that until you delete one of those that's way down in the bottom and you start creating those gaps. Once you start creating those gaps never get totally filled back up. And eventually, because like I say, the system I think has a little with it, and it doesn't always unallocate all the space. I think eventually, if you're changing your mods out like I do, I mean, I see this happen. Okay, I see it start. It starts just a little bit at a time, just a little deceptive, and then later, it's like, no, you've got quite a bit now, and that's okay. But hopefully, most of you aren't changing mods in and out every day all the time. Hopefully, most of you are not doing that. So, this is just to be helpful, like I said, and to explain how this works in a way that I think will make sense to everybody. If you think of it that way, download those core things you want first. Remember that when you delete something, it doesn't matter if you slide it all the way to the bottom of this list before you delete it or not. When you delete it, that's, until, like once you download it, it's in its spot, whatever spot that is. And that will depend. Like if you download it as one of your core things up front at the very beginning, then you'll have a nice, neat little packed area there. But once, like I say, whether it's in that core group or if it's in your next group where you swap things in and out or whatever, eventually you'll create some of those gaps doing that. So, but that's the best way to handle it, though. Download those core mods first that you're always going to use. Then download the stuff that you're fairly certain you want to use for that playthrough. And then download the very end, download the test stuff that you're going to fool around with. That's how I make my reserve space last the longest. Now, eventually, like I say, I do change it around. Maybe it's not every 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe it's longer than that, but still, I do eventually. And eventually, I will blow this away again and start over. But I just wanted you to know that doing all that other stuff is not going to work. It's not going to change anything. When you move a mod around in this list, you are not moving the data. You're only moving this little entry. You're just changing that table of contents or that index entry. That's all you're changing. You're not moving that data. Because if you were, think about when you download a big mod like Botox. When I download this and it says it's 100% downloaded, my machine basically freezes for about 30 seconds while it writes that data out. It doesn't matter what disk I use, that's what it does. And then and then it frees back up again. If this was actually moving the data, then every time I moved it, it would freeze up for 30 seconds and not let me do anything. But it doesn't. Now maybe you don't have that like I'm talking about where it freezes up for 30 seconds. I don't know. But it does for me on my drive. Now, that's all I can tell you. It doesn't seem to matter if I use my external drive or my internal drive. If I have a really big mod, it causes that issue. So I've ended up, I think, leaving it on my internal drive, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so that's it. Just think of it as like a Tetris bucket of storage, and try to get as much in the beginning that you know you're going to keep as you can, and save the stuff you're going to test or try out to the very last. Leave it to last, so that if you swap it in and out, hopefully it won't create as many gaps, or as bigger gaps, and it will, you'll be able to fill those in better with mods that you're trying, and hopefully it'll help you make it last longer before you have to change everything up. So it's just a thought, if that helps you to think about this that way. And again, just remember, you can move it to the bottom of your list if you want, if that makes you feel better before you delete it, but that doesn't change anything. Just moving this picture, moving this entry does not change where that data is located. That data, once you download it, it doesn't move until you delete it. So it doesn't matter what you do on this list. That has no impact. If they had written software, had they written into this software that kind of coding, then that would mean that every time we rearranged our load order, it would go out there and rearrange our data for us. That's what I wish they had done. Had they done that, all this other stuff wouldn't be necessary. Yes, managing this would be a little slower and would be maybe a little monotonous for me. I could live with it. But it would be worth it knowing that it was rearranging that data and keeping everything nice and compact and making good use of our space. But that's not what it's doing. If it was doing that, that would be great and wonderful. We would never have ghost space, but it's not doing that. So anyway, I just thought I would try to communicate that to you and hope that would be helpful to you. I'm not trying to be overly technical, and I'm not the only person in the world that knows that that's how this works. Okay, so anyway, I just thought I would do that because I see people at times saying things that just aren't correct, and I don't want to be mean to them, but I just want to let make sure that everybody knows that that doesn't matter. That's not going to change anything. It doesn't work. That's not how it works. I wish it did work that way, because that would be better for us. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I didn't smack anybody. That was just my hands. I don't know why I did that. But anyway, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day. I will catch you later. Hey, while you're here, consider clicking on that subscribe button. Oh, but watch out, YouTube, they're getting ready to show another commercial. You better get out while you can. Click on that video in the box there. Well, too late.